we're going to do prompts, right? To talk about like what tech you might be using for the projects you're working on, planning, investing in. And then, yeah, I'll sit and answer questions about Unity or try to give you whatever technical insight I can try to find within myself as you ask questions. So quick introduction. My name is Thomas Winkley. I'm a technical marketing advocate at Unity Technologies. It's a really fancy way of saying I'm a Unity developer that likes to talk to people. So I work on our academic and nonprofit team, specifically engaging with academic institutions and nonprofits. And our team services the entire world. So I get the opportunity to talk to folks globally, which is really fun. So stuff about me, I love rapid prototyping. That's probably the biggest thing I do. Generally, you have those like weird, like waking dreams at 2 a.m. where an idea hits you and you write it down really quick and then you try to solve it. Like that's kind of what I motivate myself to work through. That, or I'll be playing a video game and they'll have like a really cool mechanic and I just want to sit down and figure out how to build it. That's kind of what drives me. I love teaching people. I love seeing people build cool stuff. I'm a huge advocate for fighting games. I play a lot of them. I travel for them. And pizza is in fact the greatest food ever made. So if we ever end up in the same city together, expect me to find a pizza place because that's usually what I try to do when I travel. Okay, so now that we all know each other and we're best friends, so the first question I think you should ask yourself if you've already dove into a project or already built in is like, how comfortable is your team with the technology that you're using if you've selected a technology, right? So, or the technology maybe you would like to use, right? Maybe you already have some stuff in the back of your mind about, oh, I would love to use this, or I think we should use something like this, or we know it should be in this space. How comfortable is the team and yourself with that? Is it learned as you go? Do you need to invest more time than you thought earlier into your design and iteration? Or is it something you already consider yourself an expert with? So this is kind of the first prompt in that worksheet. And really the idea is just kind of thinking about what your learning curve or what your acceleration time will need to be in the field you're thinking about working in. And I believe the goal here is I'll let y'all kind of fill that out and noodle on it and throw questions at me while we kind of hang out for a few. So yeah, if you have questions, feel free to unmute and just like yell at me. Or I guess if there's a hand raising mechanic here, you could use that as well, but whichever, we're all cozy.
Sorry, Tom, are you going to do all the questions and then let them work for a bit?
Is that the way you prefer to do it? I could do it. Yeah.
I think so, just because we're going to go into breakout rooms so that the teams can work individually. If that's cool.
Totally. Yeah. So
awesome.
Apologies,
Thank you.
I misunderstood the idea. So that's the first question you're going to want to answer then, right? How comfortable is your team with technology you're using? What technology you're using? The other question is, what's your minimum viable product? I can see most of y'all. Let me hit this button. Yeah, now I see a grid. How many folks know what a minimum viable product or an MVP is? If you raise your hand, if you've got the idea of that. If you don't, that's cool too. Okay, so seeing about 50%. So the idea of minimum viable product is interesting because it's kind of across like technological development and product development. It's what is the least amount of things I can ship for this product to make it functional and have people utilize it and get a message across, right? And it's really powerful in the world of game dev because scope creep happens a ton. It also happens a lot in product, right? You get an idea, you start building something, and then you go, oh, we should add this, and then you write it down. You're like, oh, we should also add this, and then you write it down. I'm pretty sure your design doc goes from 2 pages to 60 pages, and you need 50 engineers and a whole bunch of modelers, and suddenly you don't have enough funding, right? And so minimum viable product is really a way to scope yourself down to say, what is the least amount of stuff I can accomplish to make this work and have that engagement hit and work with everybody? And should that work, then I can start building on top of that. So that's what we mean when we talk about a minimum viable product or an MVP, right? What is the least I can do and feel successful to get this product moving forward? It's also really helpful when you're trying to ship something because scope creep also, suddenly you're trying to climb this mountain and then you get to the summit and then you look and Mount Everest is actually still in front of you, right? And so having a minimum viable product breakdown is really nice because you can get to that summit, ship, get feedback, build, and then continue to go to the next part of that mountain. If you can't tell my body type, I've never climbed Everest, but I imagine it's really hard. So the next thing is like, what 3 pieces of tech are going to help you get there? Now, this could be tech you're already using. This could be tech that you think you would want. This is tech that you believe you could use, but what are they? Like, just think of 3 things, right? You know, it could be Miro boards. It could be Unity. It could be Maya, 3ds Max, it could be a LiDAR point scanner, it could be a really comfortable office chair, just like whatever pieces of tech you think like, hey, these are things that are going to make my product build well, and it's going to help move my teams forward faster. And then the final thing you want to think about is, all right, cool, I've got my MVP, I know my 3 pieces of tech, I kind of know the learning curve. What obstacles am I going to be facing to get to that MVP? What are the challenges I'm going to have to overcome on these roadblocks in order to get there, right? Do I need 3D assets? Do I need scans of the world? Do I need a technical writer to help translate things so that it makes more sense to people that aren't in the field like me? Do I need people in the field because I'm trying to build a product and something I don't fully understand? Whatever it is, what are those obstacles that you foresee? And those are it. Those are the 4 prompts that you're going to jump into your work groups and kind of brainstorm and fill that out.
Thank you. I know that we put a pin in Mint's question. Do you want to just repeat? It's about social, how to social aspects, right? Mint.
Yeah, and also how in terms of using Unity to build the world in the documentary space.
Yeah.
How to quickly, build the terrain, build the sky, build, all of those shebang in comparison to Unreal. Sorry to make it a comparison, but
no, it's my job. No worries. Honestly, like they both are really, really powerful tools, right? When I was hearing you talk about wanting to make sure that your trees were like super accurate and like indigenous, though, my first gut was like, you should be using SpeedTree. So it's a Unity product that we acquired, and essentially you could create these trees and create like templates for them. But instead of having to take and duplicate and manually modify, they have a really nice procedural and randomization piece where you could then just go, okay, I'm going to build a cottonwood forest or a redwood forest. And you would just choose redwood and it would randomize and start spreading redwoods into your scene, right? And you can also control like the level of detail and how intense, that thing. As far as terrain goes, Unity has an integrated terrain tool. So you can literally just build terrains on the fly. With mountains, regions, you can paint textures in different layers right inside the engine there. And obviously, if you're working with Blender, Maya, Max, whatever, you could also just export the FBXs and pull them in. So it's all pretty integratable. As far as skies and stuff go, if you're going for like super high visual fidelity, we have the high definition render pipeline, which gives you full control over all like the global illumination and the volumetric stuff. You can do custom skyboxes. So honestly, I think we're both very well suited for that. It's just depending on your comfort level and what you're more used to. I mean, if it was me, I would do Unity, but I've also been using Unity for almost 10 years, and that's what I'm comfortable with, is what I know, right? But I think it handles it just as well. And there's a lot of other tools you could consider too. I heard some folks talking about Unreal. I'm like, okay, well, we found a pretty easy pathway using their stuff to get digital twins in. We have all very similar situations. If you're using like, point cloud scans, we have Pixies, which allows you to then convert that data and bring it right into the engine, which is a tool that's pretty usable in like architecture, engineering, construction, but it's also multi-talented. And there's a lot of stuff there that is available for you to use too. So does that answer the question, or is there other stuff you want me to go more depth on, or?
Yeah, that's that. What about like the social, like bringing people into the scene? Like how does the connectivity works?
So there's a couple ways you can do it. We just released Unity netcode for game objects. It literally launched like a whole new rehash of our multiplayer system. It's like a month old. It's really, really nice. And the idea there is to make multiplayer development more accessible, because multiplayer dev's hard. I don't know any other way to describe it. Like, you're dealing with server synchronization, different locations, different bandwidths. You've got to figure out your transport layer. Like, it's hard. And that's why big studios have people that just do that all the time, right? And so we're trying to democratize that by tightening things up. So Unity netcode for game objects is a really great way to handle that. We also, if you want to do like voice chat, so we're actually, Unity has the #1 used voice chat service. It's called Vivox, Vivox. And it's pretty much an out of the box voice chat system. And my understanding on the billing is it's free until you get to like 1,000 or more concurrent users is where you have to start paying for the service, which, not to say your experience won't hit that, but I assume in testing and building it probably won't have 1,000 people, right? And so Vivox is awesome, and it's so powerful that actually, like, this is kind of the industry secret that people don't always say. Like, we use some of Unreal's tools and they use some of our tools. They use Vivox. Like all the big Unreal experiences with multiplayer voice is actually on Vivox. And some of our photogrammetry tools as well. So we're competitors, but we're also buddies in a way. So like I would look at Unity Game Services specifically for the multiplayer, but netcode for game objects. We call it NGO for short. And then I would take a look at Vivox for your voice chat. I've been to 1 or 2 webinars on it. I haven't integrated it myself, but it's pretty plug and play out of the box type stuff. Like you integrate it to the engine, you pop it up, and there is an Unreal and a Unity package for it. So if you don't feel like doing a full engine switch, you could probably integrate it into your Unreal session pretty well.
Thank you. Very great tips and tools.
Thank you so much. Just quickly following up on your tree tool suggestion, do you have a Buffalo tool for the Waves of Buffalo team?
So we don't have a Buffalo tool. We do, though, however, have a prefab brush inside of Polybrush, which is a tool we have that lets you spread prefabs. So prefabs in Unity are the idea of a prefabricated something that you can reuse ad nauseum. So like, I don't like my favorite example of it. There's this really dumb movie called Grandma's Boy about game developers, but they're like all the levels start looking the same. And they're like, but we changed the orcs in level 3 to be green, right? But that's actually a really common game dev and real-time thing of like, I'm going to reuse this model 100,000 times and I'm just going to slightly modify things or randomize them or change the color, right, to add that crowd. And so that's what Polybrush does is you can literally be like, I have this buffalo prefab with these random ideas here. And then I'm just going to spread the buffalo, right? You can just, you like left click and drag, just like you're painting in Adobe, my goodness, Photoshop. And it'll just drop the buffalo in scene. So we do have like prefab spreaders and randomization things you can utilize. And, you know, with that, I spent probably a little more time than I should have with the Buffalo team, but we were talking about like the idea of one small random thing. But if you have one buffalo and that buffalo has 15 random behaviors, and then there's 50 of those buffalo doing 15 random behaviors, suddenly you get a really nice big random crowd, right? And it looks really spread out. And so this would be a great way to do that. And as you change and build on those behaviors, the way prefabs work in Unity is, say you're like, all right, well, I've got this buffalo kind of functioning, but I want to go in and enhance the behavior tree. When you make those changes, when you hit apply prefab, it applies to all of your buffalo. So if you have 500 buffalo in the scene, you don't have to go through and manually change every single buffalo. You just hit apply to prefab, and then all of those buffaloes go, oh, cool, my reference changed. Let me just grab my new stuffs, and they'll do the things you want them to do. So it's a pretty powerful iteration tool that we use, and we use it. I mean, that's it. I'm sure Unreal has a very similar function because game development studios would not survive without something like that. Like you need to be able to reuse and prototype quickly. So,
Tom, 2 questions. One being a larger one, given the fact that we're in a co-creation studio. What would you say is the best cloud to cloud, like collaborative way of working in Unity? Because Unity has its own method of exchanging files between 2 people, but then I've used SCM or plastic SCM to do check and check out. What would you recommend as an insider in terms of if somebody wants to collaborate with somebody who's not in their town?
Yeah. I mean, I'm paid to tell you the plastic SCM is the best. I really like plastic. Actually, it's really, really good.
Okay.
I would say, so the challenge with plastic is from a nonprofit / educational model, it's built on a DevOps model. So what that means is you're putting a credit card on file, right, to pay for overages. You can't just have like a PO that you pay us annually. We're trying to figure that out right now, but it'll take some time for us to get in sync with that product team and sort it. But plastic is actually really, really good. It was built with game dev in mind. That's why we acquired the company and integrated them into the editor. I also really like the in-editor check-in, check-out, right? You can do it right from Unity. You don't have to go to a desktop application. That being said, any kind of management, remote collab is important. GitHub, depending on file size, can be problematic. I teach a lot of GitHub, though, for like our beginners and educators, and I'm a fan of it. I love GitHub. And as a developer, right, like that's my resume. My GitHub profile is my resume, right? That's the downfall of plastic is I can't have a public plastic profile with all the repos I've worked on, where with GitHub I can. What's the other thing? You know, that I heard really, really good things about Perforce. I've just never used it. But I've heard Perforce is really, really gold standard as well. But personally, I think plastic and Perforce are probably neck and neck with quality. Plastic is really good, and the support you get from plastic is really good. We have a dedicated support team that'll work with you on stuff. And depending, and cost, it's free for 3 seats up to 50 gigs of storage. I think, no, 5 gigs of storage and 3 seats. So that's pretty nice there. But if you start going over 5 gigs, that's where I think it's like $10 for an extra 15 or 25 gigs a month. So it's not super expensive until you start getting like massive, like enterprise scale, and things are different. But yeah, I think Perforce, I mean, if I was looking at 3, it would be GitHub, Perforce, Plastic are the 3 I would be looking at. And if I was to prioritize them, depending on your file size, I would go Plastic and Perforce first and put GitHub third, because GitHub struggles with massive binary files, which in the world of real-time 3D and creative, depending on your visual fidelity you're targeting, it's pretty common, right? I mean, I just did a workshop in Mexico City last week on like real-time film, and I cut the files down, and it was still like a 1.5 gigabyte package for like the smallest thing I could send these students to work on, just because it was high quality textures, high quality models. I had one character, one small scene, and it was almost 2 gigs. So.